Hafaday and good morning to you and to the people of Guam. Today is Thursday, June 22nd, 2023. This oversight hearing will be conducted by myself, Senator William A. Parkinson, Chairman of the Committee on Fire, Agriculture, Power and Energy Utilities, Public Transit, Unemployment Insurance, and Universal Health Insurance. This hearing is called to order, and the time is now 10:01. For the record and to comply with the open government law, notice of this hearing was disseminated via email to all senators and local media outlets on Wednesday, June 14, 2023, and the second notice was also shared to all senators and local media on Monday, June 19, 2023. Notice of this hearing was also posted and available on the Guam Legislature's website and the Government of Guam Public Notice Portal. This oversight hearing is a call upon Guam Fire Department to address the items on our agenda relative to the following: Typhoon Mawar recovery status, E911 outstanding vendor payments, and firefighter recruitment. The rules of conduct when this oversight hearing shall be as follows. I'd like to welcome my colleague, Senator Duenas here. Thank you for being here. The rules of conduct when this oversight hearing shall be as follows. When you speak, please make sure that the microphone is on and state your name and title for the record-keeping purposes. Panel members are asked to remain in the room for questions or for additional testimony as may be desired by members of the committee. Questions and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda. Personal infringement as to the character or motive of any senator or any individuals testifying is not permitted. Individuals who fail to abide by these rules will be restricted from participating and will be escorted and removed from the room. We will now hear discussion from those who joined us today. I will allow you to introduce yourselves and your positions or title. After that, you could start with your testimony or discussion. Basically, just give us a brief after-action report on the Typhoon Mawar recovery status as per your department.
Thank you, Senator Parkinson, and honorable senators present, chiefs and firefighters that are with us here today. Thank you for coming. We'll start with the topic of recruitment. We are, as we discussed, we are 100 firefighters short, approximately. We need approximately 304 firefighters to meet standards set forth in NFPA 1710, which is a nationally recognized standard. Thank you. Thank you. So again, we'll need approximately 100 firefighters to meet that 304 needed to meet the standards set forth in NFPA 1710, taking into account the 2-in, 2-out standard. I provided a spreadsheet to you to show you the costs associated with that. Okay, and in addition to recruitment, we are short certain positions. I did provide a spreadsheet there for a payroll clerk 3, personnel officer, a heavy equipment mechanic, maintenance specialist, property control officer, program coordinator 4, a payroll clerk 2, administrative assistant, data clerk, entry clerk, statistician, administrative aide, and payroll clerk 1. And again, other information there on associated costs based on monthly funding needs. Now, with these shortages, our firefighters are basically holding the fort, keeping things moving forward, and multitasking in some cases. We're doing innovative ways of keeping the department going. However, in some cases, this is requiring us to use a lot of overtime. So if we hire, then that'll minimize overtime costs. The E911 balance. Public Law 36-8 appropriate funds in the amount of $3,880,716 to the Guam Fire Department. These funds that were restored back to the Enhanced 911 Emergency Reporting System Fund that were inappropriately taken from the fund by previous administration and restored by Governor Lou Leon Guerrero. GFD needs these funds to cover costs for the agreement between the Guam Fire Department and AT&T, also Taito, for the design, installation, operation, and maintenance of a next-generation 911 system and integrated computer-aided dispatch system, also known as CAD. And again, the costs associated with that are indicated on the spreadsheet that provided to you, with a grand total of $5,364,599.85. Based on the above, the amount appropriated in Public Law 36-8, the $3,888,716 will cover the cost of the first year of the contract and partially for the second year of the contract, which we are at the present time. We'll be needing an additional $291,890.87 to cover costs for the remainder of the second year of the contract, and $1,191,992.98 for a grand total of $1,483,883.85. Our recommended solution is request the governor authorization through bill form to request appropriation of the Enhanced 911 Emergency Reporting System Fund balance as of fiscal year ending fiscal year 21, based on the Governor of Guam financial statement for fiscal year 21, which we provided to you. And that attached financial statement from the Office of the Public Auditor shows fund balances at the end of the year, FY 21, of $5,881,041. However, that did not subtract the amount of $3,880,716 that was appropriated by Public Law 36-8. The adjusted fund balance should be at approximately $2 million, which is the amount we are requesting to cover costs for a shortage of funding for the second year of contract agreement and the third year. The remaining balance will be used for the purchase of bidirectional amplifier system, so we will be able to use our communication devices at the new 911 center. The procurement of the APCO in telecom and image trend ambulance interface into the CAD system, the computer-aided dispatch, as well as other items that will be needed. Relative to the actual fund balance of 9 funds, we'll verify with DOA accounting as to the actual figure. In terms of typhoon recovery, the Guam Fire Department responded throughout the storm, even in condition 1, at the discretion of each individual station officer in charge. Our land mobile radio system is still down in the south. It's pretty much owned by GPD, and we've been having issues with that because of the repeaters, Chief? The repeaters that are down. We sustained minimal damage at the fire stations, and our focus is on station hardening on shutters, 25 kVA or more generators, and water tanks. So that's our focus. Another item for discussion is the designation as peace officers for our 911 dispatchers, which is a trend in the United States. Subject to your questions, sir.
All right, so hold up. The 911 operators are not considered first responders right now?
Not on Guam, sir.
Not on Guam.
Yes, sir.
But this is something that is happening in the States.
That is the trend in the United States. The first state to do it was the state of Texas, and the Texas governor designated their 911 fire and police dispatchers as emergency responders.
Okay. I know that with a lot of interagency work, having a lot of these things standardized usually helps integration between various interagency workings. Would it behoove your mission if we made E911 operators first responders as well?
In my professional opinion, yes, sir.
Okay. That is certainly something, it's a little bit of a surprise to me that that's not already the case, but I think that's something that we can certainly work on. And then let's wrap a little bit about the emergency 911 funding that you guys still require. You said you need a little bit for the second year maintenance and all of the third year maintenance, and that roughly comes out to about $2 billion.
That is correct, sir.
And then from how I understand it, the money is already there,
Yes, sir.
and you just need access to it.
Yes, sir. We need authorization to access the funds.
Okay, and could you walk me through the series of events that led to how did this money sit in the account and not get spent?
Yes, sir. I will defer that to our financial chief, Chief Nkenko.
Sure.
Good morning, Senators. Michael Nkeku, Assistant Fire Chief, GFD. How the fund ended up in the so-called account that we can use is after every fiscal year, there is a lapse. There's a lapse of funds. So those funds remain in the E911 surcharge fund, unappropriated, unexpended funds. So the only way we can go back and use that is basically to get authorization, because the only authorized funding that we can have access to is what's appropriated in our fiscal year budget. So at the, I just got a so-called unofficial financial statement for FY22 ending, and there is 3.8 million in the E911 account. That's separate from what is currently appropriated for this fiscal year.
Okay, and when was this money returned to the E911 fund? I'm just trying to get a sense of the timeline there.
Yes, it is in Public Law 36 dash 8, and that was in fiscal year 21.
Fiscal year 21?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But they should have appropriated an additional $2 million for you to spend, and they
Yes,
just...
that they did.
Okay.
That's in
And why didn't, do you know why they didn't appropriate the full amount at that time?
No, because it was not part of the Appropriations Act.
Ah, I see, I see.
It was not part of the fiscal year Appropriations Act. It was a separate funding, and it was a bill that was passed outside of the normal fiscal year budget hearings.
Okay. And this money would go towards paying off your vendor. What would happen if your vendor were not paid?
Oh gosh, I don't want to go that route.
Basically the support services for maintenance and whatnot would be cut off.
Yes.
Because I've seen the new emergency 911 center, and it's very impressive, very modern. But one of the things I've always worried about on Guam is maintenance, and so as much as possible, I'd like to keep that thing shiny and new as long as we can, and stay on top of that maintenance. And this money that's already there is what you guys need to pay them off.
Yes.
That money will be sufficient to do so.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it's already in the E911 fund. You're just not allowed to use the lapsed funds.
True. Okay. I just want to add on that Taito Corporation has been very good to us. They understand our financial situation and have been very patient and continue to be patient with us.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, gentlemen, if the money's there and this is what it's for, I think we should be able to work something out to get you authorization for it. And then I guess the last thing is firefighter recruitment. Need a little clarification. You said you needed 100 bodies to meet your mission of, what was it, a 304 needed?
Yes, sir.
And then you said you also needed 11 administrative staff.
Yes, sir.
So is that 100 firefighters and 11 administrative staff, or is that 89 firefighters and 11 administrative staff to meet your...
That's 100 firefighters.
100 firefighters plus another 11. So you need 111 bodies to meet your mission. Is the firefighters plus the staff?
Yes, sir, to fill our vacancies.
Okay. Roughly what does it cost to hire a new firefighter?
The costs were provided to you on that spreadsheet. Basically, a grand total annual cost per recruit is approximately $88,475. And that also includes the benefits and all that other funding required.
So about 75,000 a year per firefighter am I reading that correctly?
Approximately like 60-some thousand.
But including
For-
the benefits though.
Yes, sir. Initially, for a fire recruit, it's approximately 29,133, plus the benefits to bring it up to 52,000. And then after their annual firefighter one, it's approximately 64,000 and 98,000 with the benefits and everything for a new firefighter.
Sir, I just want to add on, inclusive in that cost of 88,000 is to send them to the Guam Community College for the fire cycle and also to cover costs for their turnout gear.
Okay. And so what would you say the all-in cost is per firefighter? 88,000?
Yes.
Yes, sir. 88,475, approximately.
88,000. So just doing a little napkin math, that would be about 8.8 million to get you 100 firefighters, brand spanking new.
Approximately, yes.
Okay. The retirement age that has been changed recently now is 55, correct?
Yes, sir.
Would you happen to know how many firefighters in your firefighting corps are 45 years and older?
Chief, you have any idea? Gosh, we don't have that info right now, sir.
Ballpark it. Like, I'm just trying to get a sense of the age.
Approximately 40%, over 40.
Probably around 40%?
Yes.
Okay. So 40% of our firefighting force could be retiring within the next 10 years.
Yes, sir.
Or less.
As I understand it today, the number one cause of firefighter attrition is retirement right now, not so much the poaching. We're actually, like, how is the retention? Are you guys doing all right with retention? Is it really just the retirements that are draining the numbers here?
Mainly retirements.
Mainly
We do have
retirements.
some outliers that leave for like medical purposes, things of that nature. But for the most part, firefighters, they stay on board until they retire.
Okay. And wasn't there a law introduced and passed by the legislature, I believe it was by Senator Moylan, that had mandated replacement firefighting? Can you tell me more about that? How's that been working out for you?
That's in 10 GCA, Chapter 72. It's the last provision of that chapter. It basically requires that the government, the fire department, along with other public safety agencies, hire 20 recruits every year.
Have you been able to hire the 20 recruits every year since that law has been passed?
No, sir.
Why not?
Funding.
There's been no funding for it. So they put an unfunded mandate for 20 firefighters a year on you, but there's been no funding source to support that.
It was a funding challenges. Yeah,
What about with the retirements, though? Would the retirements not allow you to pay the new people with the funding from the retirees?
Let me add on to that, sir. We are, as we mentioned in our budget hearing, I think it was Monday, we are working with the administration in acquiring funding for 20 fire recruits, and that is in the works right now. As I had mentioned on that budget hearing, our deputy fire chief have been knocking on doors, and they might end up locking those doors for him. But they are working that funding, and we do foresee hiring 20 personnel before the end of this fiscal year. Now, in regards to whether there is a action taken to replace those that retire, we do send in recruitment GG1s after every, whenever a person retires. But we can't necessarily fill that one position because we need to accrue at least 15 to 20 to have a fire academy in itself. So that's why we wait for it to accumulate up to 15, 20 personnel at that time. It doesn't make sense sending to recruit or 2 personnel to go up there for 6 months of training, you know.
I understand.
Yes.
So because you have to wait until a whole class is ready to go, though those vacancies build up until you have a critical mass of about 15 to 20.
Yes, sir.
I gotcha.
I also want to add on that the positions being vacated are normally supervisory ranks. So then promotion takes effect. That's where we do send in for GG1 action for promotion in itself. And I have to say, within the last 6 months, we've promoted approximately 96 firefighters total to fill those supervisory ranks.
Well, looking at this deficit of firefighters, there's 2 ways we could potentially go about solving this problem. In my mind, we can solve this problem through, we have a mandate to hire 20 firefighters. Maybe we hire 30 to 40 a year and we slowly creep that number up to meeting it. Or we take a big step and we take a big gulp and we have 100 firefighters hired in a short period of time to really bolster and supplement the workforce. I'm not sure what the options will be in terms of the budget constraints. We'll see what we can do more as the budget continues. But I do find it really concerning that we have a shortage of 100 firefighters to meet our basic mission. And I commend you guys for meeting your mission so far because from all intents and purposes, it seems like you guys are doing a fantastic job and I'd like you to keep it up. But at the same time, I don't want you guys to be burned out wearing too many hats. Let's try to get you the help you need. When I was in fire myself, there was always the question, was it better to sip your water or to gulp your water when you were in a dehydration situation because of fire? And the answer was always, it was better to gulp your water. And I bring up this analogy because we have that same question before us. Is it better to hire a big number of firefighters in one gulp or to do it in tiny sips? Well, the reason it's better to drink your water in a big gulp is if you do it in sips, that sipped water only goes to the most critical parts. That means that there will be other parts that will be neglected as part of the body's own triage. And it's better to drink all of your water in one go because then some of the organs that necessarily wouldn't be helped are getting helped as opposed to when you sip it. And with such a significant deficit, 100 firefighters, that means you need to increase your firefighting force by 50%. That's a very significant number. But with the impending retirement age, like 40% of our people retiring in 10 years, that's a significant number. Would you agree? And like you guys are doing fantastic now, but just from the pace of things, I do not think you are at replacement levels. I think that in 10 years, if we do not do something about our hiring, your department will begin to struggle with the expanding needs of the island. And so, what would, in your professional opinion, what would better serve the needs of the fire department? Would a bigger influx of firefighters in a short amount of time better serve your mission, or would a consistent, continual, slower drip be more conducive to serving your mission?
I think a steady, consistent influx of firefighters, because a highly specialized job being a firefighter, it's very dynamic. There's so many fields within the field of the fire services and fire and emergency services, which is what we want to call it today, versus just fire service. It's now the trend, and to make it more correct, it's fire and emergency services, because it's not just firefighting, it's EMS, it's paramedicine, it's hazardous materials, it's fire investigation, it's plan reviews. Our guys are trained to be pretty much knowledgeable in plans, just like a building engineer or a building inspector. So there's other areas, there's training, there's leadership, management, financial training. So it's very dynamic and constantly changing and improving tactics, and the fire science is constantly evolving. And the fire hazards that are out there with all the new inventions, there's it's just becoming more dangerous. We're getting larger houses with more combustible materials, synthetic materials that are more toxic. So it's just very dynamic. We now have drone pilots. Again, enhanced 911. Our 911 dispatchers are credentialed and certified, just like a professional 911 center in the United States. So just the technology, keeping up with technology. So it's a lot for the firefighter, EMT, hazmat specialists to absorb. And our academies, the time frame, we're cramming so much into that short time frame. So there's just a lot of considerations.
Okay. And then I want to shift gears a little bit to the Mawar recovery. You had mentioned things like generators and pumps that you would need during the emergency, during the incident itself. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that in terms of generators and water tanks that you need? Like, how many were you short? Were you short? How many do you need in the future? Like, kind of, tell me a little bit more about the on-the-day Typhoon stuff. Like, what did you guys intend to do? Were you able to execute on that plan? Were ambulance services able to meet their demand?
We were always able to respond throughout the storm and after the storm. But like all other public safety agencies, one of the major challenges, of course, was communications. We did have issues with plumbing, water supply, electricity, but the fire department, I'm glad to say that we're one of the first agencies to pretty much get on our feet again. We're still in the response/recovery mode, but for the most part, we're almost all on the green in many areas. But again, one of the major areas that remains problematic is communications.
How so?
Down south, we're having issues with our LMR systems, our land mobile radio systems. So that's a problem with us and police department. Now, when we do respond, as soon as our units do get to the scene, they're able to communicate with each other by line of sight using our radios, just like your typical walkie-talkies. But in terms of them communicating with fire dispatch, that's where we're having challenges. So what we do is rely on cell phone technology. So we contact dispatch with cell phones. But even with that, there's certain areas that are dead spots, even using your cellular device.
And what would it take to mitigate that issue?
Right now, the issue is being addressed, and they're working on fixing the towers. So that challenge it's an island-wide challenge, communications. But again, all the communications partners are working on it right now.
All right. But in terms of generators and water tanks and all that, you guys are good to go.
There'll be situations where like FEMA or our local government will provide generators, but then they'll provide a generator, and as soon as we get on island power, they'll remove the generators.
Okay, but you had them enough for your needs to be sufficiently met?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. I think that covers my questions. I would now like to open the floor to Senator Duenas here. Please ask as many questions for as long as you like, sir.
Just Mossy, Mr. Chairman, and it's kind of a review for me because I was here on Monday for your oversight hearing on your budget. So I really only have two questions. Going back to the E911 system and the requirements, I thought I heard that you had requested that in this fiscal year budget? Chief?
No, not in our fiscal year budget.
Okay.
Our fiscal year budget is based on the forecasted revenues, and it was 2.1 million, if I'm not mistaken. And that's just to fund current operations, and it's separate from the funding of the NG 911.
Okay, so I guess, are you sufficient with this current fiscal year budget to handle the expenditures associated with the E911 system?
With the system, the NG 911,
Yeah,
part of the contract? No, we don't. We don't.
So you need a standalone bill for this?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's why we need that authorization to use that $1 million to pay for the remaining contract years, and also any expenditures that's associated with the NG 911.
So if I remember right, during our fiscal year budget, what you were requesting is to convert this fund into basically a revolving fund constantly appropriated. That's what our
Yes,
chairman
yes.
was saying.
Yes, sir.
So that you have access to this and you don't need standalone appropriations anymore.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I guess that's might have been my
Yeah.
confusion. So, have you requested of the governor to at least allow you to use your lapses and reimburse this fund with, use current year funding?
Yes. Well, the Budget Appropriations Act states that we can spend up to the amount we collect. And we can only collect about approximately $2 million at the average per year. So that's definitely less than what we actually need to pay for the NG911 system.
Okay.
Yep.
So I think that we have to introduce a bill then, is what you're saying. I want to make sure I'm clear.
Yes, sir.
Because if that's
Yes,
the
sir.
case, I mean, we need to get on it. I mean, we're already going into our budget cycle. So it's either we introduce a standalone and pass it for the balance of this fiscal year,
Yes, sir.
or we include it in the budget as a line item so that, you know, you have that capability and you can count on that coming up in your next fiscal year budget.
I suggest for expediency purposes that it be a standalone budget, knowing the fiscal year budget would not be entertained probably until August. And
Right.
we're in dire need of paying the vendor.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I still suggest, Chief, try to work with BMR. I mean, I've done it before as a director that you can do journal vouchers within funding sources
Yes, sir.
to move the money, and then we can
Yes.
reimburse it with the
Yes.
account. But, you know, I'm sure you're going to make sure that everything's operational. But I have no problem co-sponsoring a standalone if that's what we need to do and moving that forward. Chief, moving over to the personnel issue, I seem to remember that you have been budgeted for the mandated law over the successive fiscal years with regard to the 20 recruits. Am I incorrect on that?
Well, the law, the language of the law that created that mandatory 20 did mention that it is within our own appropriated funds, and it is not included in our appropriated funds.
So in order for it to be an unfunded mandate, it would mean that you didn't request it? Or,
Yes.
or
Yes,
you
sir.
or you weren't, or you requested it and your budget was adjusted to not reflect the capabilities of being able to do it, right?
Yes, sir. Our budget was basically, as you are experiencing being a director, and so there are certain limitations or ceilings provided in adherence to the governor's executive budget in itself. So, you know, I do recall last fiscal year, we did ask for an additional personnel. However, the end result was 1.5 million was cut from our budget.
Okay. So let's be clear going forward, because I think I remember this from Monday. Do you have in your budget request adequate funding for the recruitment of 20 officers for this fiscal year? Coming
No, we
fiscal
do
year?
not, sir.
Okay. Well, then I'm going to have to ask the chairman to implore. So you're saying the fiscal year budget that we just heard, there's no funded vacancies for recruitment of firefighters?
None whatsoever, sir.
Okay. Well, then I'm glad I came today. Because I'm operating under a misunderstanding of what that status quo budget was going to do. So yeah, Chairman, it looks like you're going to have to work with the finance budget chair to make sure that that's included in this fiscal year request so that you can get a cycle moving and be able to do it for your next fiscal year. So currently, Chief, you have no intentions for the balance of this fiscal year to stand up a cycle. Chief Manabusa.
We don't have that, sir. But we are ready to execute if we get the funding.
Subject to fund availability.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I guess my only last follow-up question would be, how many retirements have you had in this fiscal year?
Approximately 8 in this fiscal year, sir, with an anticipation of 5 more by September 30.
Okay.
For the last 3 fiscal years, we've had over 60 retirees.
Okay. So I'm trying to understand if we've had those retirements, but we haven't replaced, but we have a status quo budget. are you then saying you're closing out those fiscal years with those lapses and they're just returning to the general fund if they're not expended?
They actually don't create lapses, they create more deficit. And the reason I say this is because when person retires, 120 hours of overtime is accrued for that one pay period. So basically, the funding for that retiree goes into overtime expenditures. So the end result in itself is still even. I know we had in our pre-budget hearing that the cost of one retiree, you can hire 1.5 recruits, the cost of hiring a recruit and probably half of another one. But those expenditures, that amount is reduced with the overtime expenditures accrued prior to hiring any recruits.
So essentially right now, with the 100 firefighter shortfall manpower, the overtime for all the balance of the current officers right now is eating up the finances that would be allocated to those firefighters.
Yes, sir, we have our current expenditures approximately $5 to $6 million. We project expenditure of $6.5 million by the end of fiscal year.
Sounds like DOC the other day.
It's
We really need
creative
to get on this
financing, sir.
manpower recruitment thing. I mean, there's just no other way around it. The fact that if you just do the simple math, putting in the appropriation for the recruitment and ensuring that that cycle is fully funded, I mean, literally pays for itself and becomes perpetual going forward. Oh, I guess I've got enough information on that, Mr. Chairman, but I think it's going to be absolutely imperative that we ensure that there is full funding for what the law calls for. As far as I'm concerned, as long as I've been around here, the only unfunded mandate is money that's not asked for or not given. So if it's not asked for, it's not an unfunded mandate because it wasn't asked for. If it was asked for and it wasn't given, then it's an unfunded mandate because we did not meet our responsibility and our duty to provide that funding so that you could execute the mission. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Duenas. Yeah, that was actually very enlightening, especially knowing that every retiree causes a deficit. Like that is, because I was wondering that myself, how is that money not being just put into a new recruit, but if it's being dispersed as overtime among everybody, then I could see how this becomes like a DOC problem. And so I will definitely work on your behalf to see if we could get that funding cycle funded. And let's try to get some more firefighters recruited, because as far as I'm concerned, this impending retirement of nearly 40% of our force is a slow-moving disaster that we need to get in front of. And I'd rather do it sooner rather than later, because right now we have a breadth of expertise and experience at the fire department, and it would be a waste if you all retired without passing that down to a fully stocked new generation of firefighters willing to take that knowledge in. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming in. And I guess my last question to y'all is there anything else you'd like to say, or any way we can help you as a legislative body to complete your mission?
I do, sir. In line with the E911 surcharge fund, we're also asking authorization to use unfunded and unappropriated funds in our so-called GFD revolving fund, which is the flame fund. We have approximately $600,000 sitting there that we can use to purchase ambulances, medical equipment, even one fire truck at the moment. And I did mention this to you, if I'm not mistaken, we were talking casually, that it also includes the flame fund.
Yes. So it looks like we got our work cut out for us here. We got 100 firefighters, 11 admin staff. We need to get you authorization for the emergency 911 funds. And then we also, if I remember correctly, we need a legislative solution so that E911 workers are considered first responders, correct?
Correct, sir.
All right. And I believe, and you guys are good to go with the generators and whatnot for emergencies, yes?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. Well, again, thank you, gentlemen, for coming in. I like to keep these things short and sweet and let you guys go. Oh, sir, you had something to say?
Senator, I'd just like to include, maybe we could take a look at.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. Could you state your name and rank
I'm
for the
sorry.
record?
Assistant Chief Tom Tetauta. So I was wondering, maybe we could take a look at the 911 surcharge fee, and that, when that was established, I'm not sure what the percentage that the fire department gets from that, but since that has been implemented, I'm not aware that that has been visited to just see, because there's an increase in the number of people who have cell phones now. I mean, we're talking middle school kids have it now.
It's basically the standard.
Right, and you know that's an increase, but so the providers have seen an increase in use in services that they provide out, but I'm not sure what fire department's cut is, but maybe that's something we could look at and see if we can adjust that, you know, accordingly. Because back when this was established, for example, let's say there was 1,000 cell phones. Today, we're probably at 12,000 cell phones, still getting the same cut. And
You'd
maybe
like to revisit that cut?
Yeah, maybe just to revisit that and see and track that, because I'm not sure if anyone's really tracking that. And we just kind of, you know, whatever the service provider deposits into the account, it's just, that's what it is. But nobody's really tracking that. So like to see, maybe we could do that because, you know, and with the buildup that's coming, there's going to be more and more people, more users, and, you know, that'll help the fire department as far as funding. So maybe something to look at. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to add on, as we mentioned in our budget hearing, we will be working with PUC, Public Utilities Commission, in increasing the E911 surcharge, because the Enabling Act, you know, for the dollar surcharge was back in 1987. And the law did authorize us to seek assistance with PUC or request PUC to increase the surcharge. So that in itself will help us continue to maintain the system. And of course, our goal is to build a standalone 911 center.
That sounds like an admirable goal, sir, and we're going to do what we can to make that a reality. Thank you all again for your participation. With that being said, this concludes our discussion on this oversight hearing on Guam Fire Department. This meeting is adjourned. The time now is 10:45.
Thank you, sir.